what you must master this year. And you're thinking, dude, it's April. Like, we're halfway through the year. Not really. If you sort of follow cybersecurity, to me, cybersecurity really starts in the second quarter. And it's really based on a lot of the reports, a lot of the key insights, a lot of the key revelations typically come out around the RSA conference. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. You know what time it is. It is time, my friends. It is time. Here we go. I hope you are ready. It is time. It is time for Life of a CISO. With yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. Now, yes, let's go back. Let's go back. I know this might sound strange. Right? 2025 CISO Survival Guide. What you must master this year. And you're thinking, dude, it's April. Like, we're halfway through the year. Not really. If you sort of follow cybersecurity, to me, cybersecurity really starts in the second quarter. And it's really based on a lot of the reports, a lot of the key insights, a lot of the key revelations typically come out around the RSA conference, right, which actually happens in a few weeks. I think this will drop right before then. I'm actually going to be there. So if you're going to be there, definitely drop me a note. Let's at least say hi, give a high five, a fist pump. I'd love to meet you. Love to say hi to you. It's probably going to be a multi-part series, but I think this is going to actually drop the week, or it's actually going to drop a couple of days before RSA. So to me, everyone does their predictions. Everyone does their new products, right? Everyone does their release at RSA. So I figured, why not do my survival guide, right? So this will be for the next 12 months, even though it's 2025, right? We sort of start second quarter, the second quarter. So what are sort of the key things you need to master? What are sort of the key things you need to focus on? So yeah, we're actually going to do a little different format. I'll actually do a few slides for you, sort of just get you focused. To me, when I sort of really think about where we're at in the industry, what's happening in Washington, what's happening in the government, what's happening in corporate America, and sort of the trends and where things are going, there's sort of 5 general categories. To me, if we're looking sort of at the tech side, because remember, we're chief officers focused on information security. So we sort of start with that information security piece. From an information security piece, you need to become a master at AI governance and threat modeling. Now notice the key words here, not artificial intelligence in terms of the technology. You don't have to become a master at neural networks and backpropagation and expert systems and how they work and how they operate and program them. I tell you, they are fun to play around with. And sort of the geek in me sort of loves to play around with the AI. I think many of you know, if you followed my podcasts, that I've actually gone in and programmed AI back in the 90s when I worked at the government. I actually did a lot with agents and neural networks and backpropagation and expert systems. That was a couple of years of my life before I got in the cybersecurity. And sort of one of the things I'm proud of is I actually built an expert witness system built on AI and neural networks that actually did predictive analysis to be able to track terrorist behavior. I'm sure many of you remember, but back in the early 90s, there was an incident outside of CIA headquarters. A person by the name of Kanzi pulled up on Route 123 in the morning when people were entering, took out a rifle and opened fired into multiple cars. People that were entering CIA headquarters, opened firing, killing many and injuring many people. He then immediately went to Dulles Airport, boarded a flight to Pakistan, and by the time we were able to realize and track who he was, we were already in international airspace, and he was able to land in Pakistan. And at the time, we did not have an extradition treaty with them. So he was basically there. And once again, you don't hurt your own, right? You don't hurt Americans. You don't hurt your own. So the CIA took this very seriously. And I was part of a task force that was actually responsible for tracking and monitoring his behavior to be able to capture him. So I worked with psychologists where they gave me all the data on how he operated, how he behaved, and I put this into a neural network system that we basically used to be able to track and monitor his behavior. And I actually got an award from the DCI for that. So very familiar with expert systems and neural networks and backpropagation. And it's all about the data that you feed it. It's the training models and then pruning and analyzing the neural network for accuracy to do very high level prediction. And the more data sets you have, the better off you are. That's why today, AI is finally coming to fruition in cybersecurity because we have enough historical data. Right? You can't build an AI system to predict attacks if you don't have historical data on how the attackers work. And you have to have accurate historical data. So the problem in the past when we tried doing AI is that either we didn't have enough historical data or the attackers were changing and modifying their behavior so much that the historical data wasn't accurate. I think most of us can say that for the most part, the way attackers operate and break into systems have been pretty stabilized for at least the last 5 to 7 years. I would say somewhere around 2017 to 2020, the sort of the means and methods. Now, yes, there's always new exploits. There's always new ways of breaking in. But if you look at the general way you target systems, you find vulnerabilities, you exploit them or break in, those fundamental components are pretty consistent. So now we have a good data set that we can actually train AI on how attackers operate and behave and be able to build those systems. So those systems are built and available. So we don't need to build neural networks. But as a CISO, we need to understand how do we manage and govern AI in the workplace. So it's not just using AI for cybersecurity. It's how do we govern and monitor AI within the workplace? Because here's the reality. Your employees and everyone you work with, if they're not already at some level, is using AI to create their work product. Whether they use AI, I know people now use AI to reply to emails or to draft up emails for folks. You can sort of get those from a lot of people. I know people use AI to build reports, to do analysis, to gather data, to gather information, to put together PowerPoints. So the reality is, if they're not already, they're going to be very quickly using AI to create work product. Now, here's the trick. What is the governance rules and regulations around that? If I use AI to create a work product at my direction, so I'm telling it what to do, I'm giving it the direction, right? So I'm still in charge, right? I am telling AI what to do, and it's creating that work product, and I'm editing and modifying it. Is that legal? Is that allowed? Is that considered proper? Now, here's where it gets tricky. Technically, if you look at the current laws that we have, if you are using AI to create something unique, something that hasn't existed, then technically, if you're the one who created it and you're the one that told AI to do it, then you actually created that work product and you potentially own the copyright. Right? Once again, there's no laws, but at least from what I see so far and what I'm hearing from everyone out there is essentially you can do that, and as long as it's creating something unique. So you tell AI, don't copy anything. I want you to put everything in and here's the cool part. You can give it your writing style. I've written a ton of books. I've written a ton of articles, so I can feed AI. This is how I write. This is how Eric writes. These are all original works from Eric. And I want you to go in and create something new. I don't want you to copy anything. I want you to create something brand new in Eric's words and language on this topic. Then technically, because I've trained it, right? I've given it my data. It's basing on my information and my work product that I own, and it's creating new work product based on my direction. Technically, I own the copyright, and that's valid and legal. Then the question comes in, is that moral or ethical? Where are the lines? Because I know now I have kids in college, and a lot of colleges and professors are saying you cannot use AI to write your papers. We're actually there's ways you can check and see whether it was AI or original, which gets very tricky, but you are not allowed to use AI. So colleges are basically saying that using AI is not ethical or not moral, right, in some way, shape, or form. So now we're getting into this interesting trend where there's laws that basically say it's legal, but then there's people that in authority that are saying morally and ethically you are not allowed to do that. So those are things that, because cybersecurity is about data and control, and not many people are taking the eye on AI, we have, as security professionals, need to understand what those implications are. Because if cybersecurity is around confidentiality, integrity, and availability, then AI governance plays a key role. Now, you might have somebody else in your organization that's focused on AI, or you might be the one focused on it, but you need to at least understand the governance and the impact that that has on our companies and our society and on you and your workplace. And then we use AI from a cybersecurity standpoint, where it's really the big focus there is on threat modeling. How can we utilize AI to better predict threats, to better predict the adversary, to better predict how they're operating and monitoring? So we sort of, as cybersecurity professionals, as chief information security officers, we need to understand AI and threat modeling. And I'm going to cover all these in detail. I'm just laying you out sort of the 5 key areas, and then we'll see how far we get today. But my guess is this will be a multi-part series. Next, executive communication. Many CISOs today still are not treated like other chief officers. And we've covered this on other podcasts, but I'll just sort of summarize. Where do you sit? Do you sit with all the other chief officers? I want you to go in and look at the CEO, the COO, the CFO, right? Chief Legal Counsel, and then look at your org chart. What other C's are at that top that report to the CEO? Normally there's a CEO and then there's direct reports. So there might be a CTO or a CIO, but whatever those direct reports are, I want you to look on the org chart and see where you are compared to all the other COs. So basically take an org chart of your company at a high level and identify, take a yellow highlighter and highlight everybody whose title begins with a C and ends with an O. So everybody who's a chief officer. I don't care about the middle letters. If your title begins with a C and ends with an O, you're a chief officer, and I want you to highlight it. And what you'll find in many, many cases, that the CISO is at a lower level than all the other chief officers. Normally, a chief officer only reports to one other chief officer, right? Maybe 2. And CISOs normally report to multiple. Right? Like in a lot of organizations, I don't like it, I don't believe in it, but your CISO reports to your CIO, who reports to your COO, who reports to your CEO. So if you look at the org chart, it becomes very clear that the CISO is not treated like the other chief officers. And they're normally at a lower tier. And the reason is they haven't mastered the executive communication. They haven't mastered being an executive. Because if they talked and acted like an executive, they would report at a higher level. I'll just be honest with you. If you're not the one presenting to the board, if you're a chief information security officer, yet some other chief officer is presenting to the board, they can tell you whatever reason they want. But if we're just level setting, we're being honest with ourselves. It's because they don't trust you to think and talk at an executive level. It's that simple. So CISOs must master executive communication. And to me, the trick, and I know it sounds bizarre if you look back at that slide, but it's through storytelling. The way you connect with people is by making something easy to understand, telling the story. If you look at a CEO, when a CEO goes in and briefs the company, when he goes in and tells the company his vision, so if your company has an all-hands meeting where you have everybody come and attend, right? You fly everybody in, all 3,000, 4,000, right? You have huge events. All these companies typically have these huge events where like Microsoft World or Cisco World or Oracle World, right? Where they basically bring in all their customers and their key folks and their key executives, and they have internal and external meetings. And the CEO talks. What are they typically talking about? The vision of the company. And what are they doing? They're telling a story, right? They're telling a story about the company and how it evolved and how it got to this place and how it's going to continue to grow and expand, right? They're not sitting there and briefing technical stats. They're not sitting there and going in and giving numbers and data. World-class CEOs tell an amazing story. World-class salespeople, when they go in and sell somebody, you're selling somebody not on your product, not on what it does, but the story it can do for you, how it can change or transform your company or your life or solve your hardest problems. So we need to get out of the technical role of bits and bytes and protocols, and we need to start telling the story. What is the cyber story you want your company to hear? And then the third thing is third party and supply risk mastery. The reality is we are relying on third parties to run our business. We are running on third parties for our security. And the reality is, what security do they have in place? If you look at a lot of the major breaches, a lot of the big breaches that have happened over the last several years, a large percent were third-party vendors. Instead of targeting the government directly or targeting a company directly, they went in and they decided to target a vendor. They decided to go in and target a specific vendor, compromise that vendor, and then once that vendor was compromised, then go in and use that to compromise all those other entities. Because here's the reality. If I target one entity and find one vulnerability, I got into one company. But if I could target a vendor that's installed at 10, 20, 50, 100 different entities, and I can find vulnerabilities in their system, then I can go in and exploit hundreds of companies and do massive attack and massive damage. So we have to become a mastery at third party and supply risk mastery. And this is only going to continue to become a big issue. Because once again, if you follow what's going on in the government now in Washington with tariffs is having a huge impact on supply chain. It's having a huge impact on vendors being able to supply products and products in a cost-effective manner. So when we talk about third-party and supply management, it's not just on what is the security, but are the vendors going to be able to have replacement parts? What happens right now if you have a product from a certain vendor and a product breaks? With all the issues now, with tariffs and not shipping products and others, you actually might not be able to get a replacement. So now that comes into interesting play is, do you need to, when you buy products, especially security products, do you need to buy replacement parts at the same time? Do you need to buy multiple systems, things that we didn't typically think about in cybersecurity? Because now, if you have your firewalls or your IDSs or your SIM, and you have your pizza boxes and hardware, and components fail, and components stop working, and you can't get replacements, that can be detrimental to your security. Because now you run into a very interesting dilemma. And this is an interesting dilemma that some of my clients are faced with. Your current firewalls have failures, hardware failures, and you can't get replacement parts. So now you really only have two immediate options. Do you actually shut down your network for 24 to 48 hours until you can buy a new product or get something else in there? Or do you run your network without a firewall for 24 to 48 hours? Have you thought about that? The unfortunate reality with what's going on now with tariffs and import and export issues, that could be a reality. That could be a reality that you face where you have critical security inline devices like firewalls or IPSs, and they fail, and you have to decide, do you shut down access to the internet for multiple days, or do you run without that device? That's a real issue and a real challenge that CISOs have to think about and have a plan in place before it actually happens. And then we get down into cyber liability and legal preparedness. So cyber insurance is becoming a major issue because you go back 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and cyber insurance was a lucrative business because many companies weren't getting attacked. Most companies had pretty good security, so they were just handing out cyber insurance and just raking in the bucks. Now, all of a sudden, you're having these massive attacks, and these insurance companies have to do $5, $10, $15 million payouts. You start doing a large number of payouts, and it starts shifting everything. If you haven't renewed your cyber insurance for this year, even if you've never had a breach, even if you've never had a compromise, you have a perfect record. My guess is be prepared for your cyber insurance to increase by 40, 50, or even 60%. Is your company ready to do that? But if you're paying $4 million for cyber insurance today, and now it goes up to 8 or 10 million, now it's an interesting dilemma. If an average cybersecurity breach costs $5 million or $6 million or $7 million, and your insurance now is $10 million, is it better to absorb the cost or go with a lower premium and only cover bigger, massive attacks, right? So now you're going to see what you see in healthcare. In healthcare, the name of the game is the premiums. So if you want to lower your healthcare, you basically say, hey, I'm going to pay for the first $10,000, and then anything over $10,000 they'll cover. So it's called major medical. Right? A lot of people, they just pay out of pocket because to have doctor's visits and basic things like $500 or $1,000 doctor visits covered by insurance, the premium is so high and so crazy that they can't afford it. So they're only going to cover major medical. Now, something new in cyber insurance, right? But now you're almost going to get into major medical cyber insurance. So now you have to go in and say, okay, what is our pain tolerance? And you want to do this with your executives before your insurance renews, because when your insurance renews, you only have 30 days or 45 days or 60 days. You don't have a lot of time. And these decisions can take months upon months. So you need to have these discussions with your executives where you're going in and saying, hey, maybe we only need protection over 10 million. So now our insurance policy is going to only cover losses over $10 million. So the first 10 million we cover ourselves, and then our insurance covers the rest. So you now start thinking about what is your pain threshold, right? And what is your legal preparedness on that front? And then sort of blending sort of the legal preparedness into the 5 is, as a chief information security officer, what legal things are you doing to protect yourselves? If you've looked at the last couple of years, and this is only going to continue into 2025, 2026, is CISOs are actually being held liable. They're actually doing what they call piercing the corporate veil and holding CISOs liable, where now executives, to protect themselves, or boards, are basically going in and saying, wait a second, if we knew this, if we knew how vulnerable we were, we would have taken different action. And because the CISO didn't tell us, we feel the CISO didn't properly communicate the actual risks and impact. Therefore, we're going to hold them liable and not us. So don't go after us, right? Go after the CISO. And there's actually been many cases where CISOs have actually had both civil and criminal charges brought against them for either lying, so potentially falsifying, or not giving accurate, correct data. So what are you doing as a CISO? Do you have a lawyer? Do you have your own insurance? Do you have your own protection? Do you have your own liability? Right? These are things where cybersecurity is becoming a major problem. It's becoming real, and you need to make sure that you protect and secure yourself. And then sort of tying into that is CISO branding and career resilience. You have to recognize that as a chief information security officer, you are a brand. You're going to get a reputation in the industry, right? There's certain key folks. Like I said, I never like putting them on the spot. We're actually going to start in the next month or two actually having world-class CISOs. I'm going to interview them. So our Life of a CISO is going to be me talking for a small bit, and then we're going to start adding some interviews in periodically so you can hear directly from them. But when you hear from these world-class top CISOs, they have a brand. They have a name in the industry. And that's what you want. You basically want to have a brand that companies know you. You actually speak at events where other CISOs come and listen to you. And you potentially even could advise companies. Why? Because now, if you're a brand, you're set for your career. You can go wherever you want. You can go with whatever job. You're not applying to jobs. They are applying to you. They're asking you, saying, hey, we have an opening. Would you think about coming to our company? This is what world-class CEOs do. They build a brand. I mean, a great example of this is if you look at the CEO of Chipotle. He has built a brand in the industry for basically turning companies around. I mean, if you look at Chipotle, it had its issues. Remember where it had some of the problems with the chicken and other folks. And you look at what he has done in building that brand and building that company. It was amazing that when Starbucks was struggling and having issues, they actually went to the CEO of Chipotle and recruited him with a ridiculous package. I mean, research this. I mean, the amount of money Starbucks threw at the CEO of Chipotle to get him to come over was amazing because he built a brand. You want to be like that. You want to build like the CEO of that Chipotle, where when companies are looking for a CISO, they are recruiting and coming after you. Because here's the reality. For many CISOs, you have to recognize in the next 12 or 24 months, there's a good chance you might be fired. There's a good chance you might have be demoted. Why? When companies have breaches, the unfortunate playbook is you hold the CISO liable and fire them. When a major breach happens in most companies, unfortunately, they fire the CISO. So you have to recognize that you will probably, for whatever reason, be changing jobs in the next 12 or 24 months. The life of most CISOs, now the world-class CISOs are set, but a lot of CISOs, you need to recognize that your career for the next 5 years is you're probably going to be switching jobs every 12 to 24 months. That's just sort of a reality of just how the market is. So you need to make sure that you build proper cyber resiliency. So now, as we wrap up, your homework, right, for the next week or the next month is, what are you doing in each of these 5 areas? What are you doing in AI governance and threat modeling? What are you doing in executive communication and cyber storytelling? What are you doing for third-party and supply risk mastery? What are you doing for cyber liability and legal preparedness? And what are you doing for CISO brand and career resiliency? Because the reality is, to be a world-class CISO, we need to think ahead. We need to look in our crystal ball, and we need to start planning what are the core skills. And if you focus in on those 5 areas, not only are you going to survive, but you're going to thrive. And probably in hindsight, I should have changed this of the CISO Thriving Guide, right? This is not just going to let you survive. If you master these skills, you are going to thrive and truly become a world-class CISO.